Welcome back to Bourbon Hunter, the channel where we chase great bottles, break down bourbon myths, and occasionally make some questionable life choices, all in the name of whiskey research. Here, we're diving into the stories behind the bottles, the trends shaking up the bourbon world, and the pours that'll make you say, yep, that's going on the top shelf. So grab a glass, settle in, and let's hunt some flavor, because around here, the bourbon's bold, the jokes are bad, and the hunt is always on. All right, welcome back to Bourbon Hunter, the only show brave enough to tell you that some of the bourbon you're chasing isn't rare. It's just marketed like a pair of Jordans on release day. Today, we're digging into the myth, the lies, the hype, and the marketing pixie dust the bourbon world throws at us. We're talking old bourbon, rare bourbon, celebrity bourbon, craft bourbon, barrel proof bourbon, and the truth behind mash bills, age statements, and price hikes. If this episode doesn't get me banned from at least 2 distillery gift shops, I didn't try hard enough. Let's start with the first myth we've all heard. Older bourbon is better. Sounds good, feels classy, makes you swirl your glass like you're in a cigar lounge reading a book no one cares about. But here's the truth. Bourbon ages fast compared to scotch. Hot summers, cold winters, dramatic temp swings. Bourbon matures aggressively. At a certain point, the barrel stops giving and starts taking. Examples of older isn't automatically better bourbons. 15 to 20-year bourbons can taste overly tannic, bitter, or like you're chewing on a popsicle stick dipped in ethanol. Knob Creek 12 versus Knob Creek 18. Many drinkers prefer 12. Four Roses limited editions, often shy 10 to 12 years, not at 18 plus. Elijah Craig barrel proof batches in the 8 to 12 year range often outperform older luxury bottles. Age isn't an ingredient, it's not a guarantee. I've had $65 8-year bourbons that beat $300 20-year bottles like they owed them money. Here's where bourbon marketing really gets fun. People think rare equals amazing, but sometimes rare just means allocated, limited, or hard to find because TikTok blew it up. So let's talk about what's actually rare in 2025. And these are based on several different polls that I looked at. I understand that some of these are easier to find in some states or certain locations, so bear with me. Still rare or hard to find in 2025. Blanton's, single barrel, gold, straight from the barrel, special editions. Weller, 12, Antique 107, full proof, CYPB. E.H. Taylor, single barrel, barrel proof, limited releases. Michter's 20-year. Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, also known as BTAC, which would be the George Stagg, the William Weller, Thomas Handy. Limited edition Four Roses releases, and some independent and store pick barrel projects. But remember, rare doesn't guarantee flavor, it only guarantees scarcity. Some bottles are rare because they're amazing. Others are rare because people hoard them like sriracha during a shortage. Myth number 3, the label story is true. Bourbon labels love a good story. Some are true, some are half true, and some are, let's say, creative writing with a bourbon education. Labels that are true. Evan Williams Bottled and Bond genuinely honors one of America's earliest licensed distillers. Wild Turkey's Russell family lineage is absolutely legit. Jimmy and Eddie Russell truly shaped modern bourbon. Maker's Mark consistency and origin story about red winter, wheat, and handmade processes is real. Michter's heritage and commitment to long cycles is accurate. Label stories that are less than true. Not lies, but definitely embellished. Many founded in 1800 labels are referencing a name, not a continuous operation. Bourbons claiming produced by on the front often are actually distilled elsewhere, also known as being sourced. Some family recipes were created in 2010 by marketing teams. Some brands imply Kentucky origin, but their bourbon is from Indiana or Tennessee. So listen, bourbon marketing is like dating apps. Not everyone is lying, they're just highlighting their best angle. Craft bourbon is one of the biggest marketing playgrounds. Some of it is absolutely phenomenal. Some taste like a Home Depot lumber aisle soaked in regret. Here's the truth. Craft bourbon has no legal definition in the United States. None. Zero. Zip. There is no federal law that defines what qualifies as craft, small batch, or handmade. These are marketing terms, not legal ones. So, what is legally defined? Only bourbon itself. To be legally labeled bourbon, it must be made in the US, at least 51% corn, distilled to 160 proof or less, barreled at 125 proof or less, aged in new charred oak barrels, bottled at 80 proof or more, and nothing added except water. That's it. Those rules apply exactly the same to Four Roses, Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, which is actually Tennessee whiskey but qualifies as bourbon by federal rules, Castle and Key, Wilderness Trail, or your cousin boiling corn in the barn. What do people mean when they say craft bourbon? Because there's no legal definition, the industry, especially the ACSA, uses guidelines instead of laws. A craft distillery usually means small production volume. ACSA sets a voluntary cap at 750,000 proof gallons per year. Independent ownership, majority privately owned, not controlled by big conglomerates. Hands-on production, distilling on site, mills grains, ferments, distills, barreled by the same place. But again, these are industry guidelines, not legal requirements. What consumers think craft means. People often assume craft means small batches, locally sourced grains, handmade, special barrels, unique flavor profiles, and distilled entirely on site. Some of these are true. Sometimes brands use the word craft, but they also are sourcing 100% of the whiskey from MGP, bottling in a tiny building so they look small, and producing far more volume than people realize. What's not craft, even when they try to look like it? If a brand doesn't distill their own whiskey, if a brand is owned by a major corporation, or produces massive industrial volumes, it can still call itself craft because nobody can legally stop them. So the real definition? Craft bourbon is whatever the brand wants it to mean. There's no legal standard, no enforcement, no official certification. The only true way to know is to know who distilled it, where it was distilled, how big the distillery actually is, what production methods they use. And you can also look for distilled by on the label, the most important 3 words in American whiskey. If it says distilled in Indiana, you know what that means. If it lists multiple states, it's sourced. If it lists nowhere, they're hiding it. So some examples of some real craft distilleries doing good work. Wilderness Trail, New Riff, Peerless, Rabbit Hole, Falcons, Frey Ranch, Castle and Key, Kings County, Iron Root Republic, Chattanooga Whiskey. Craft doesn't mean bad. It means different, more experimental, more character, but sometimes the price tag overshoots the experience. Myth number 5, barrel proof is automatically better. Ah, yes, the barrel proof bro era. We've all met one. He only drinks barrel proof. He judges you for adding ice. He smells the glass so hard he almost passes out. Brands commonly marketed as barrel proof equals better. Elijah Craig, barrel proof. Stag Jr., now Stag. Old Forester, 1920. Not barrel proof, but marketed in the same high proof elite category. Rare Breed. Larceny, barrel proof. Four Roses, barrel strength, private picks. Barrel proof is awesome, but it's not automatically better. Some barrel proofs taste like getting slapped with a flaming oak plank. Celebrity Bourbon Truth. Celebrity Bourbons, the land of overhyped bottles and disappointed wallets. But, surprising fact, a few of them are actually amazing. Examples of celebrity bourbons that are legit good. Long Branch with Matthew McConaughey and Wild Turkey. Mesquite, oak charcoal finishing actually works. Smooth, refined, unique profile. Blackened with Metallica. The blasty music maturation thing sounds goofy, but the whiskey is legitimately solid. The blackened and Willet cast strength editions are beast. Others that actually taste good. Sweeten's Cove with Peyton Manning. Heaven's Door with Bob Dylan. People talk about mash bills like bourbon DNA, and that's actually a perfect analogy. It's the foundation, the blueprint, the core ingredients. But just like DNA, it doesn't tell you how the environment, the aging, or the upbringing will shape the final outcome. So what does the mash bill tell you? The flavor category you're going to fall into. There are three bourbon mash bill families. Traditional bourbon, 70 to 80% corn, 12% malted barley, 10% rye. Flavors are caramel, vanilla, oak, slight spice. Examples would include Jim Beam, Elijah Craig, Evan Williams, Four Roses Yellow Label. High rye bourbon, 20 to 36% rye. Flavors are baking spice, pepper, herbal kick. Examples would be Four Roses B recipe bourbons, Old Grandad, Basil Hayden, Bullet Bourbon. Wheated bourbon, wheat instead of rye. Flavors are soft, round, sweet, bready. Examples would be Maker's Mark, the Weller lineup, Pappy Van Winkle, and Larceny. The personality of the bourbon, the mash bill affects spice level, sweetness, grain forward versus yeast forward profile, how fast it ages, how it interacts with the barrel. High rye bourbons age slower and maintain spice longer. Wheated bourbons mature faster and risk becoming too oaky after 12 to 15 years. The potential range of flavors. Mash bill helps you predict whether a bourbon might lean fruity, spicy, sweet, herbal, grain heavy, bread-like, or peppery. But mash bill does not tell you the rickhouse location, barrel entry proof, yeast strain, warehouse type, rickhouse versus palletized, humidity, blending skill, exposure to temperature swings, quality of the barrel itself. You can take the same mash bill, age it on different floors of the same rickhouse, and get two completely different bourbons. Mash bill is the blueprint, the barrel is the architect. Small batch might be the biggest magic trick in bourbon. People imagine 5 barrels lovingly chosen by monks in a stone cellar. In reality, small batch could mean 5 barrels or 5,000. There is no legal definition. Zero. Nada. A brand can call a blend of 3 barrels a small batch. A brand can call a blend of 300 barrels a small batch. A brand could probably call a blend of 3,000 barrels small batch if their lawyer is confident enough. So what is consistent about small batch? Even though size varies, small batch usually means it's a controlled blend. Not the entire warehouse, not a full-scale run. The distiller selects a certain group of barrels to hit a specific flavor profile. It's blended intentionally. Craft distilleries may use 3 to 10 barrels. Mid-sized distilleries might use 20 to 100. Big boys might use 200 to 500. Still, small batch is a curated flavor profile. It's more consistent than single barrels. Single barrels are wild child unpredictable. Small batch evens out the chaos and targets a brand-specific flavor. It's meant to taste the same year after year. That's why it exists, to maintain identity. Examples of small batch differences. Maker's Mark small batch uses large batches, sometimes hundreds of barrels, but extremely consistent. Four Roses small batch uses 4 specific recipes blended together. Frey Ranch small batch, small craft batches, sometimes 4 to 6 barrels. New Riff small batch, generally very small blends, often less than 20 barrels. Small batch basically means we blended this on purpose, but we're not telling you how many barrels we used. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Bourbon doesn't have to come from Kentucky. Kentucky is the heart of bourbon, no doubt. But bourbon is an American spirit, and America is a big place, full of big personalities and even bigger stills. Texas bourbon. These boys play on hard mode. Texas heat ages bourbon fast. Sometimes a 4-year Texas bourbon tastes like an 8-year Kentucky bottle. For example, Garrison Brothers. It's the first legal bourbon distillery in Texas. It's known for its intense oak, bold flavor, and massive heat influence. Balcones. They're experimental masters. They do wild grain choices, smoked whiskeys, and Texas blue corn bourbon. Iron Root Republic. It's owned by 2 brothers. Their bourbons win global awards, especially internationally. Indiana, home of MGP, the secret source of America's whiskey. MGP and Ross and Squibb. The giant behind dozens of source brands. Their 95 to 5 rye changed American rye forever. Their Remus Repeal Reserve bourbon series is top tier. Tennessee bourbon. Yes, Tennessee makes bourbon too. Chattanooga whiskey. It uses Tennessee high malt recipes with wild malt combinations. Fermentation first philosophy leads to super unique flavors. George Dickel bourbon. famous for the Dickel charcoal mellowing process. Their 8-year bourbon revived the brand. Their whiskey is so wildly sourced by private labels. Nevada, Frey Ranch, one of the only true grain-to-glass estates in America. They grow their own corn, rye, barley, and wheat. Everything is done on site: farming, distilling, bottling. Their straight bourbon is one of the cleanest grain-forward bourbons on the market. New York, Kings County, one of the earliest modern craft distilleries in the U.S., small copper pot stills. They innovate like crazy, using chocolate malt, roasted barley, and more. Their bourbon is rich, dark, and unique. Colorado, Law's Whiskey House, known for their heirloom grains and high-altitude aging. Their 4-grain bourbon is a cult favorite among whiskey geeks. Utah, High West, the Blending Kings, masters of blending sourced whiskey with their own stock. Midwinter Night's Dram is a holiday unicorn. Virginia, a Smith Bowen. Their distillate is made from Buffalo Trace's mash, but doubles distilled in Virginia. Bowman brothers, John J. Bowman and Abraham Bowman, are consistently great. If bourbon were limited to Kentucky, we'd miss out on some of the best innovations in the entire whiskey world. Bourbon is bigger than one state, even if that state has the best basketball fans and the most horses. Price inflation truth from 2010 to 2025. Let's talk about the part that hurts the most: price. The bourbon world has gotten expensive, but not always without reason. Examples of bottles and their price increases. Blanton Single Barrel. In 2010, it was $45. 2015, $55. 2020, $65. 2025, $95 to $110. MSRP is still at $70, but good luck. E.H. Taylor Small Batch. In 2010, that was $35. 2015, $40. 2020, $50. 2025, $65 to $90, depending on location. Four Roses Single Barrel. 2010, $38. In 2015, $42. 2020, $50. 2025, $65. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. In 2010, $45. 2015, $55. 2020, $65. 2025, $80 to $95. So as you can kind of see, after 2020, which we all remember as the pandemic, it seemed that prices really spiked almost $10, $15, $20 versus those years before. We were seeing like a $5 increase per year or per every 5 years. So why did prices go up? Demand exploded. Thank you, TikTok. Corn, barrels, energy, shipping cost skyrocketed. Distilleries expanded, new warehouses, new stills. Allocation shifted as global demand increased. Secondary market pressure pushed up retail demand. Some price hikes make sense. Some make 0 sense. Some brands are just testing how far FOMO can stretch before we snap a credit card in half. The exotic oak myth. Aged in special imported oak. You've seen it. That label screaming French oak or Hungarian oak, like they just imported barrels from the Chateau de Bourbon. And your wallet goes, ooh, fancy. But let's get real. Bourbon legally must age in new charred American oak barrels. Imported wood almost never happens. For example, some labels like Buffalo Trace Experimental Series might hint at French oak finishing. In reality, they're using charred American oak and sometimes just slapping on color tweaks for marketing drama. Hunter tip: if a bottle screams exotic oak, it's usually just charred American oak dyed to look exotic. The only thing that's actually imported is the marketing team. Celebrity chef whiskey, distilled for a celebrity chef or mixologist. Now here's a classic. You see crafted for Gordon Ramsay or approved by Jim Beam's favorite bartender. The bottle is like, hey, this is fancy. This is approved. Reality check, that celebrity probably tasted it once in a hotel suite and gave a vague thumbs up. Hunter tip, celebrity endorsements don't equal quality. They equal a marketing budget. Look at a celebrity whiskeys like Brad Pitt's Not Dead Yet project. Yes, it is cool. But the proof of the pudding? Still bourbon. Still juice. Still the same stuff your neighbor can pour from the local liquor store. Rare wine barrel finish. Finished in rare wine barrels. Wine finishes are trendy. You've seen it. Angel's Envy, port finish. Woodford Reserve, double oaked. High West, double rye, sherry cask. All promising magical flavor. But rare often means leftover wine barrels from a mass production winery, not exactly vintage Bordeaux. Hunter tip: don't let finish hype fool you. It's mostly about color and a hint of sweetness. The flavor revolution, more like marketing whisper. Limited release may equal seasonal marketing. Limited release when it's just seasonal. Here's a sneaky one: brands dropping the same bourbon every fall or spring, calling it limited, selling out fast. Look at Eagle Rare 10-year, fall release, or seasonal Buffalo Trace Bourbon Heritage. Limited? Maybe. Rare? Not really. Hunter tip: true limited releases are gone forever after the first batch. Seasonal releases? Just annual marketing events that get you to camp outside your liquor store. Ancient techniques. Distilled using ancient methods. Ancient techniques, the phrase itself, is like a history class in a bottle. But the reality, everything is still pot or column stilled in modern equipment. They might be using traditional recipes, but nothing here is actually ancient, unless you count the paperwork. Hunter tip: if it's marketed as ancient, check if it's more storytelling than science. Look at Maker's Mark. They like to call themselves traditional, but that doesn't mean that they're stirring mash by hand in the moonlight. Cast strength or not? Cast strength but diluted to taste. Cast strength bottles scream bold, unapologetic flavor, but many brands, like Four Roses Single Barrel Private Selection, will pull a strong barrel, blend it with a weaker barrel, then add water. Still legally cast strength. Hunter tip: real cast strength should feel unapologetic. If it tastes soft, you're drinking a marketing compromise. You're not getting the punch you paid for. You're getting the compromise edition. Handpicked Barrels Myth. Handpicked barrels by our team. Labels love showing a team in a warehouse, sniffing barrels, nodding wisely. Reality, most barrels are picked by a machine. Humans just sign off. Even some Buffalo Trace experimental barrels get the automated treatment. Hunter tip: handpicking sounds artisanal, but consistency is usually automated. That Instagram photo, pure theater. Double barrel aging that isn't. Double barrel aging is a classic marketing hook. They hype it like it's a flavor revolution. Often, they just move whiskey through a second barrel for a few weeks, not the full aging period. Example: Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Finish and Port. Check the aging schedule. Most of the depth comes from the first barrel. The second just adds lipstick. Hunter tip: short-term barrel switches don't give the depth you're paying for. Don't be fooled by a fancy label copy. Local water myth. Distilled using local water. Only local spring water sounds magical, like the bourbon absorbs the Appalachian aura. Reality, distilleries filter, treat, and mix water anyway. Buffalo Trace, Woodford Reserve, Four Roses, same story. Hunter tip: local water sounds good, but it doesn't change the final product. Don't pay extra for mystical H2O. Barrel char levels and special finishes. Barrel char level X makes it special. Extra char number 5, super char, midnight toast level. The difference between number 3, number 4, number 5 is subtle. Most people won't taste it. Same with fancy finishes, red wine, sherry, tequila. Sometimes it's just color and sweetness tweaks. Hunter tip: flavor impact is minimal. Most of the magic is in your imagination and label design. Bottled by hand, rare grains, and awards. Hand bottled equals 95% automated, symbolic hand touch. Rare grain varieties, mostly commodity, corn, rye, and barley. Awards equal quality. Some are paid or low participation competitions. Example: Maker's Mark 46 boasts a special finishing, awards, and hand bottling. Yes, tasty bourbon. But don't confuse marketing and storytelling with actual rarity. Small town, family-owned branding. Many brands market themselves as local, family-owned, heroes of bourbon history. Reality, corporate-owned, staffed by interns and branded polos. Classic example: Smooth Ambler, or some craft distilleries in Kentucky. Hunter tip: DSP number and ownership check tell the truth. Marketing will always hype the hometown story. Reality might be a slick office downtown. For this next portion, I'm going to try very hard to not repeat myself as we continue this episode. This is the only bourbon channel where your host has tasted enough bad marketing to qualify for a PhD in BS detection. These are the deep cuts. the hidden tricks, the corporate sorcery, the stuff that they whisper about in boardrooms while drinking the good stuff they don't let us buy. I'm going to break it down what you see on the bottle versus what the producer sees behind the curtain, and whether it makes a difference in your glass. This is going to be long, it's going to be brutally honest, and it's going to ruin a few labels for you. With love, let's hunt. Ancient yeast strain discovered in a cave. Consumers see the Indiana Jones yeast. Some distillery claims they resurrected a yeast strain from a cave, a monastery, or the bootlegger who died clutching his last mason jar. What producers actually use? A stainless steel yeast propagation tank that's about as ancient as a 1998 Dell laptop. They refill, refresh, and rebuild the culture every few weeks. Yeast mutates too fast to be ancient. Reality check: if yeast really came from a cave, the marketing team would have died from spores before the bourbon hit the shelves. Barrel proof. Technically. Consumers see this mystical idea of a single barrel, untouched by human hands, bottled straight from the wood like frontier lightning. Producers see 3 barrels blended together, one hot, one average, one sleepy. Proof drops naturally, add a splash of water to standardize. Still legally barrel proof. Hunter note: it's barrel proof the same way I'm athletic because my shoes technically touched a gym once. Warehouse X is the magic warehouse. Consumers see the legend. Rickhouse B produces the best whiskey. Every barrel from there wins awards. Producers see a creaky building with hot spots and cold spots. The magic is the temperature swings, not the alphabetical character assigned to the barn. If you want complex bourbon, pray for floors 4 and 6 and wild season changes, not warehouse astrology. Our master distiller oversees every barrel. Consumers picture the master distiller walking the rickhouses like Gandalf with a whiskey thief. Producers know the master distiller is approving blends, approving budgets, doing interviews, managing staff, and showing up once a week to taste a curated lineup already pulled for them. The actual rickhouse work, done by a team with forklifts and spreadsheets. If the master distiller literally oversaw every barrel, they'd have forearms like a professional arm wrestler. Non-chilled filtered equals raw flavor bomb. Consumers see the pure, unfiltered Viking-style bourbon. Producers know most non-chilled filtered bourbons are gently filtered at room temperature. Non-chill filtered isn't legally defined. Brands can still remove plenty of oils and call it pure. It's the bourbon equivalent of no makeup selfies. There's always some filter. Farm to bottle grain story. Consumers imagine grain grown by one farmer, hand delivered by tractor. Producers know most buy from commodity brokers blending grain from multiple states. Some distilleries don't even know the exact farm origin. The only thing local is usually the marketing budget. Ocean aged, sort of. Consumers see pirate ship barrels aging on choppy waves. Producers know some brands actually ship barrels around the world. Respect. Others claim maritime influence because the rickhouse is near a river. Or they moved the barrels on a truck once. Driving over a bridge doesn't count as ocean aging. Peak maturity. Consumers hear we harvested the barrel at the exact perfect moment. Producers mean it tasted good and we needed inventory. There's no formula for peak maturity. It's subjective and usually driven by warehouse space and bottle schedules. Bourbon doesn't have an expiration date like avocados. Traditional sour mash. Consumers see a mystical old technique used by frontier distillers. Producers know almost every bourbon is sour mash. It's just the industry standard for consistent fermentation. It's like bragging your restaurant uses traditional salt. Hand signed by the master distiller. Consumers see a personal autograph. Producers know that's a printed signature. Master distillers aren't signing hundreds of thousands of bottles. If they did, they'd have to ice their wrists between batches. Vintage whiskey. Consumers think old, rare, historic bourbon. Producers know vintage often means we printed a year on the bottle. The bourbon inside may not be any older than usual. Vintage is a vibe, not a guarantee. Proprietary filtration technology. Consumers see a groundbreaking process worthy of a TED Talk. Producers use charcoal, paper filters, carbon pads, standard stuff. Proprietary is another word for don't ask. If you can build it with Home Depot parts, it's not revolutionary. Collector's edition bottle. Consumers think investment piece. Producers think, can we sell the same whiskey in a new label for $15 more? Sometimes the most valuable part is a cardboard tube. Rapid aging technology. Consumers think science replaced time. Producers know ultrasonic waves, pressure cycles, light exposure all help, but none replicate real time in a rickhouse. You can't microwave a brisket or a bourbon. Mountain climate bourbon. Consumers imagine Rocky Mountain air swirling flavor into the barrel. Producers know the distillery is near a highway, but the mountains look cool on the label. Air isn't magic if it smells like diesel. Master distiller's personal blend. Consumers think he crafted this by himself by moonlight. Producers know it's one of the many blends approved by a panel. Master distillers guide the process, but they aren't making 87 personal blends a year. Aged 6 to 8 years. Consumers think a balanced blend of 6 to 8 year bourbon. Producers mean mostly 6 year, maybe a splash of 7 or 8 for flavor. It's aged 6 to 8 years. The way my height is 6 to 8 feet, depending on which boots I'm wearing. Handmade barrels. Consumers imagine old school coopers hand shaping every stave. Producers order from independent stave company like everyone else. The handmade part was typing the purchase order. Old rickhouse equals better whiskey. Consumers think historic building, historic flavor. Producers know old rickhouses are charming but inconsistent. The building's age doesn't make the bourbon older. If it did, we'd age whiskey in abandoned malls. Finest grain available. Consumers think premium gourmet grain. Producers know most grain is sourced from large brokers. Differences exist, but marketing exaggerates them. Finest means the truck delivered it on time. Frontier aging technique. Consumers think the pioneer's secret method lives on. Producers know rickhouses are modern facilities with OSHA compliance. No one is Asian bourbon like a frontier moonshiner, but it looks great on a bottle. Crafted by veterans, firefighters, lawmen, cowboys, pirates, astronauts. Consumers think the whiskey is tied to noble professions. Producers know most of the time the brand picked a theme. It's branding, not biography. Still delicious, but not a resume. Sustainably sourced oak. Consumers think eco-friendly bourbon. Producers know American oak is sustainably harvested by law. It's not special. Eco-friendly means we followed regulations. Triple aged. Consumers imagine 3 long aging cycles. Producers know it's 1 regular aging cycle plus 2 short finishing barrels. Triple barreled is not triple aged. Limestone water magic. Consumers think cool, mystical spring water. Producers know it's mostly treated water run through RO systems. The limestone is more in the brochure than the bourbon. Filtered through 100 pounds of charcoal. Consumers think more charcoal equals better. Producers know once filtration hits equilibrium, extra charcoal does nothing. But it sounds fancy. Judges' favorite at spirits competition. Consumers think this bourbon beat 200 others. Producers know some competitions have 3 judges and 12 entries. One guy liked it. That's the whole basis of the award. Signed by the blender. Consumers think actual signature. Producers know it's digital. They approved a PDF, not your bottle. Rested before bottling. Consumers imagine the bourbon meditating before its final stage. Producers know it sat in a stainless tank because bottling lines were backed up. Not Zen, logistics. Charcoal mellowed, not filtered. Consumers think a mystical Tennessee process. Producers know it's filtration. They just don't call it filtration. Perfectly balanced flavor. Consumers think objective perfection. Producers know balance is subjective. Your perfect might be there, needs work. All right, Bourbon family. This is the part of the episode where we stop nibbling at the edges of bourbon marketing nonsense and start carving into the whole brisket. What I'm about to tell you, this is the big stuff. The stuff distillers don't write in press releases. The stuff brand ambassadors tiptoe around. The stuff executives pretend they can't recall at this time. And the stuff bourbon nerds whisper about in Facebook groups like it's the Da Vinci Code. Except instead of decoding a painting, they're arguing about what makes Warehouse C so special. This is the finale, the long sit down, the deep pour of truth. Almost an hour into it, so pour something good. Not expensive, not hyped, not limited, just good. Because you're about to hear the real bourbon story behind the myths, the buried secrets, the marketing miracles, the lies, the truths disguised as lies, and the lies disguised as legendary lost barrels. Let's roll. The myth of the lost barrels. Every distillery has a version of the lost barrels story. Every single one. It's the ghost story of the bourbon world. You've heard them. These barrels were forgotten in a corner of Warehouse H. They were mislabeled and rediscovered decades later. Nobody knew they existed. It was destiny. Destiny. Buddy, but Destiny didn't do that. Larry with the clipboard did. And let me tell you the truth. Barrels don't get lost. Barrels get misplaced, miscounted, mistagged, or temporarily reassigned because someone didn't want to update a spreadsheet. What consumers see. A magical, once-in-a-generational bottle. A holy relic of the bourbon world. A gift from the bourbon gods to mortals. What producers see. A mistake. A PR opportunity. A chance to turn oops into ooh. A story worth an extra $200 per bottle. And once they slap that lost barrel label on it, collectors descend like Pokemon trainers because nothing sells faster than a mistake with a story. When lost really means the intern screwed up. Let me paint you a real picture from inside a distillery. Some barrels get rolled into a bay. Someone writes row 12, bay G on the sheet. Someone else accidentally writes row 21, bay C. Boom. They simultaneously exist and do not exist. Then, 8 to 12 years later, someone auditing the warehouse inventory finds barrels covered in dust like Indiana Jones found them. The internal email thread looks like, hey guys, anyone know what these are? Oh shit, did we miscode those in 2009? Let's not dump them yet, might be useful. Marketing is drafting the press release. Examples of lost barrel legends, real and alleged. To keep lawyers happy, we're using safe phrasing like allegedly, reportedly, and I heard from a guy who heard from a guy. But here are some categories of real-world examples. Example 1. The accidental extra-aged batch. A well-known Kentucky distillery in the early 2000s put aside a row of barrels intended for 6-year bourbon. Someone forgot to schedule them for dumping. 10 years later, those forgotten barrels became a limited 10-year release, priced at a cool $129. Consumers, whoa, decade-aged prized treasure. Distillery, thank God someone forgot to move those. Example 2. The Rick House nobody checked. There was a warehouse in Bardstown used mostly for storage overflow. Someone assumed the barrels were backup stock. Nobody tasted them for nearly a decade. When someone finally sampled them, boom, the forgotten Rick House collection. Consumers, this is an old distillery secret. Distillery, this was an OSHA violation waiting to happen. Example 3, the flooded warehouse lot. Heavy rains caused water damage in a Rick House. Barrels were moved to a temporary section while repairs happened. Paperwork, it got jumbled. Years later, they became the Survivor Series. Barrels that endured the flood. They endured being put in the wrong spot by someone who had to go home early that day. Part 4. How marketing creates a legend. This is the formula. Step 1. Find something unusual. Wrong location, wrong age, wrong notes. Any mistake will do. Rewrite it as destiny. If bourbon is older than intended, nature refused to rush perfection. If bourbon is younger, captured at the exact moment of peak vibrancy. If stored in the wrong warehouse, a rare microclimate unlike any other. If nobody tasted it until late, our team showed incredible patience. Step 3. Add scarcity. This will never happen again. Unless it sells well, then it will mysteriously happen again. Add lore. These barrels were whispered about among our workers. No, they weren't. Add a black label. Black labels add $40 of perceived value instantly. Step 6. Raise the price. Buy as much as you can get away with, which today is a lot. The real effect of myths on drinkers. Myths change behavior. Collectors stop buying for flavor. They buy for FOMO, prestige, story, secondary value, shelf flexing, Instagram approval. Marketing creates the myth. The market creates the madness. Myths sell bottles. But they also warp the bourbon world into camps, arguments, breakfast store lines, parking lot fights. I traded a kidney for a Weller 12 memes. The industry has a toolkit of myth making. These are the cards distilleries keep in the deck. Found barrels, seasonal releases, heritage family tied to nothing, ancient recipes rediscovered, magical yeast strains, new artisanship, old world craftsmanship, handpicked, oldest rickhouse, only warehouse with XYZ airflow, double oaked, triple charred, quadruple toasted, whatever. Dusty revival, remastered, rediscovered mash bill, specialty water source. It's the bourbon version of comic book superpowers. The secret meeting. Whether it's Jim Beam, Heaven Hill, Buffalo Trace, Barton, Wilderness Trail, or Four Roses, every big brand has a version of the meeting. Not a shadowy Illuminati thing, just a conference room full of people who know exactly what the bourbon nerds fall for. They discuss things like, what can we call limited without actually limiting it? What term sells this year? Toasted, double oaked, stave finished? Are people still buying the master distiller touched every barrel thing? Should we bring back the lost rickhouse story? Trust me, if lost barrels sell well, more get lost. Conveniently. The real magic of bourbon. Here's the part where we get real. No jokes. Bourbon doesn't need fake stories to be special. It doesn't need manufactured legends. It doesn't need $1,000 price tag. It doesn't need celebrity chefs or ancient yeast strains or labels aged in a cave in Italy. What makes bourbon great is grain, fermentation, distillation, oak, time, real people doing real work, real flavor, real community. The myths are fun, but they're not the reason why we love bourbon. Have you ever stopped and wondered why bourbon, of all the drinks on earth, is the one that captured your heart, your taste buds, and your credit card limit? Because let's be honest, bourbon didn't just become a hobby. It became a lifestyle, a treasure hunt, a profession you don't get paid for, but absolutely commit to like a full-time job. But tonight, I'm telling you a story of why we love bourbon. Not the marketing version, not the notes of oak and cherry pie version, but the Bourbon Hunter version. The tale of how everyday people fell in love with its spirit, got swept up in its culture, got seduced by its myths, and sometimes maybe broke the law trying to get a bottle of Pappy. This is a story of why bourbon grabbed America by the taste buds, and hasn't let go since. Bourbon is the most American thing since arguing on Facebook and pretending we invented everything. Whiskey existed long before America, sure. But bourbon? Bourbon is the kid America raised on corn, chaos, corn, ambition, corn. And did I mention corn? It's made in America, born out of immigrant hands, perfected by generations, marketed by corporations, collected by grown adults like Pokemon. Bourbon gives us identity. It gives us tradition. It gives us something to debate other than politics and who makes the worst potato salad at the cookout. It's not just a drink, it's a cultural handshake. We love bourbon because it feels like time travel. People drink vodka when they want to forget. People drink bourbon when they want to remember. There's something about the fact that bourbon sits in a barrel, soaking up seasons, absorbing winters, summers, humidity, bird poop, dust, and comes out tasting like caramel magic. Every bourbon is a time capsule. When you open a bottle of Wild Turkey 101, aged 6 to 8 years, what were you doing 8 years ago? Probably not improving as consistently as that bourbon did. And then there's Old Granddad Bonded, a bourbon that tastes like 1950 slapped you in the mouth in a good way. We love bourbon because opening a bottle feels like opening history, even if the label was printed last week. We love bourbon because the stories are ridiculous. Distilleries don't just make bourbon, they tell stories like your grandpa after 3 drinks. Crafted by monks in a sacred valley. That's Kentucky, Jim. A sacred Kentucky valley. Based on a 200-year-old family recipe. Sure, so are most recipes. It doesn't mean anyone followed it. The original founder used to roll barrels down a hill and into the river. Yeah, because they didn't have forklifts yet. Bourbon is full of myths we know are wrong, and we love them anyway. Examples of myths consumers fall in love with. Blanton's is rare because it's rare. Reality? It's rare because we buy it like it cures loneliness. Pappy Van Winkle is the best bourbon ever made. Reality? It's the best story ever told. Age equals guaranteed quality. Reality? Sometimes age equals old tree tea. Mash bills tell you everything. Reality? Wood influence says, hold my staves. We love the stories, even when they're wrong, because bourbon lets us play along with the myth. We're in on the joke, but we still want that bottle. We love bourbon because there's always a hunt. No other drink turns adults into treasure seekers like bourbon. Beer, go to the store. Wine, go to a nicer store. Tequila, have someone else go to the store because you made bad decisions last time. Bourbon? You'll drive across state lines, hide behind Kroger end caps, and become best friends with a liquor store clerk named Dennis who gives you the wink when something special arrives. Bourbon is Pokemon for people with back pain. Hunter story example. One time a guy camped outside a store for 12 hours because he heard they might release 4 bottles of Weller Antique. 12 hours. He said it was worth it. He paid $130. We love bourbon because chasing it makes us feel alive and slightly insane. We love bourbon because of the news headlines. The bourbon world is the only industry where the news sounds like a combination of a Hallmark movie and an episode of CSI. Some classics? Truck carrying 6,000 gallons of bourbon overturns on the highway. Imagine the tragedy. Thousands of Kentuckians driving by whispering, is it salvageable? Man arrested after swimming in distillery fermentation tank. Sir, that is not how you proof down. Bourbon warehouse collapsed crates whiskey river. Kentucky was like, yeah, that'll happen. Distillery fined for whiskey fungus overtaking entire town. Black fungus everywhere. Houses look like the set of a bourbon-themed horror movie. Residents are complaining. Collectors are like, can I lick it? Does it taste like Buffalo Trace? Bourbon news is chaos with a cork, and we love it. The popular myths that make us smile. Myth, the Rick House is magical. Consumers, each Rick House has unique energy. Producers, each Rick House has unique temperature problems. Myth, the master distiller signs every bottle. Consumers believe it. Producers laugh while the signature machine warms up. Myth: the bottle was lost for 10 years. No, it wasn't. Someone mislabeled a pallet. We love these myths because bourbon is the only hobby where the lies are charming instead of dangerous. We love bourbon because of the Papy Heist. Ah, yes, the holy grail of bourbon crime. Let's tell it Bourbon Hunter style. The Pappy Van Winkle Heist. In 2013, someone stole over 200 bottles of Pappy Van Winkle right out of the Buffalo Trace warehouse. This man stole more generational wealth than 3 divorces combined. The bourbon community lost its collective mind. Facebook groups were doing forensic analysis. People were comparing cork patterns. One guy said he could smell a fresh open Pappy for 20 yards. Nobody believed him. Buffalo Trace had full-blown CSI bourbon going. News outlets acted like someone stole the Liberty Bell. And then it turned out to be an inside job. A long-running theft ring of good old boys who were stealing bourbon like it was printer paper from Office Depot. And they called it Pappygate. You know, a heist is legendary when it gets a Netflix documentary and half the bourbon Facebook groups still blame the bourbon flippers. But here's the thing. Even after the heist, even after the drama, even after the documentaries, we love Pappy more than ever. Because bourbon people love a legend. And if that legend involves crime, theft, and poor decision-making, even better. It's basically Kentucky's Ocean's 11. We love bourbon because it brings people together. Think about it. No one gathers around craft vodka. Nobody goes, hey, want to come over and open a 7-year-old gin? But bourbon makes friends out of strangers, collectors out of casual drinkers, nostalgics out of cynics. Examples of how bourbon unites us: barrel picks, bottle shares, distillery tours, arguing online about whether E.H. Taylor is actually good, saying cheers to people you met 5 minutes ago, helping a stranger find their first bottle of Weller, and watching them react like they discovered buried treasure. Bourbon is community in a bottle, and a little bit of oak-flavored peer pressure. We love bourbon because it lets us pretend we are experts. Everyone thinks they're a bourbon expert after finishing 2 barrels worth of YouTube videos. You'll hear things like, I'm getting hints of saddle leather. Sir, you've never even ridden a horse. This one finishes like chocolate-dipped raisin. But you eat gas station snacks. Notes of whetstone. Where have you been licking stones? We love bourbon because it gives us permission to act like we know something without a bow tie. The real reason we love bourbon, at the end of the day, we love bourbon because it feels like home. It reminds us of campfires, stories, good friends, stupid arguments, family gatherings, growing up, growing older, celebrating victories, surviving mistakes. It's the drink that sits with us through life, one pour at a time. It's simple, yet complicated. Traditional, yet always evolving. Approachable, yet mysterious. Affordable, yet sometimes priced like it cures arthritis. We love bourbon because it's something to look forward to, something to share, something to savor, something to hunt, something to talk about, something to learn, something to laugh at, something to enjoy. Bourbon gives us story. It gives us heritage. It gives us community. It gives us comfort. But most of all, bourbon gives us something to care about. And that, friends, is why we love bourbon. You know, after all of these myths, lies, marketing tricks, half-truths, quarter-truths, and whatever the hell Kentucky math is, it makes you wonder why we keep coming back to bourbon. I mean, think about it. We just spent the last hour talking about how the industry lies harder than a guy trying to tell his wife he didn't buy another bottle, while clearly holding a store pick in a brown paper bag. We've got brands inventing 185-year histories out of thin air, distilleries claiming that their Grandpappy's secret recipe, even though Grandpappy was 2 years old when the company started, and bottles that look like they should come with a treasure map and a warning label that says, if you believe everything on this label, that's on you. And yet, we love it. We absolutely love it. We sit around like kids at Christmas waiting for that new release. We refresh Instagram like it owes us money. We chase mash bills we can't taste, barrels we'll never see, and impossible unicorns like Pappy, who ironically got stolen by a guy named Toby, who wasn't exactly Ocean's 11 material. Yeah, the Papy Heist. The most Kentucky crime ever committed. Millions of dollars in bourbon going out the back door, one CrossFit curl at a time. The police report even said the main suspect had noticeable biceps. Well, yeah, if I carried that many heavy ass bottles, I'd have biceps too. But that's part of the charm, right? Only in bourbon can a heist become folk legend. Only in bourbon can a single bottle cause a line down the street at 4 a.m. Only in bourbon will grown adults fight in a Facebook group over whether Buffalo Trace is too allocated, which is like arguing whether water is too wet. The truth is, bourbon isn't about the label. It isn't about the age statement or the single barrel program or even the marketing that tells you the founder chopped down a tree with his bare hands and used it to stir the mash while wrestling a buffalo. Bourbon is about moments. It's about the first time you had a pour that made you stop and say, wait a damn minute, that tastes good. It's about the bottle you opened with your dad, or the one you shared with friends after a long week, or the one that you saved for a celebration and then opened on a random Tuesday, because sometimes Tuesday deserves something nice too. It's about community. This weird, dysfunctional, passionate, hilarious group of folks who argue for 45 minutes about whether Wild Turkey 101 is underrated, then turn around and buy each other bottles just because they can. It's about stories, good ones, ridiculous ones, legendary ones. Like the bourbon writer who tasted it dusty from the 60s and said it tasted like oak, vanilla, and heartbreak. Or the guy who claimed he could instantly identify any bourbon blind and then guess Jack Daniels for 5 straight pours. Or me, standing in the liquor store telling myself I don't need another bottle, while slowly reaching for it like a raccoon stealing a shiny object. It's about the hunt. Even if half the bourbon you're chasing is hyped by marketing departments lying through their teeth while writing copy like distilled on the fog-kissed banks of ancient limestone hollers. Sir, that's I-65. Calm down. And we still love it. Because bourbon connects us to something older, something real, something uniquely American but shared worldwide. It's not just a drink, it's a tradition, a craft, a piece of cultural heritage poured into a glass and aged until it tastes like time itself slowed down. And sure, some of the bottles are overpriced, some are overhyped, some are marketed with more fiction than a Marvel movie. We don't chase perfection, we chase experiences, we chase memories, we chase that feeling. Bourbon is history we get to sip. It's craftsmanship we get to enjoy. It's storytelling we get to participate in. Sometimes willingly, sometimes because a distillery slapped a guy in suspenders on the label and we fell for it again. And no matter how many myths we bust, no matter how many marketing tricks we expose, no matter how many lies we drag out into the sunlight, that love just doesn't go away. If anything, it gets stronger. Because now you know the truth behind the bottles, and knowing the truth doesn't ruin bourbon, makes it richer, more honest, more fun. So here's to the hunt. Here's to the pours we've had, the bottles we're still chasing, the ones we'll probably never find, but we'll talk about anyway. Here's to the stories, the laughs, the community, and the myth-busting journey that somehow always ends with another pour. And here's to you, the viewer, the hunter, the collector, the drinker, the dreamer, the person who stuck around through all of the madness today. Raise a glass, not to the bourbon, but to the experience. Because at the end of the day, we don't love bourbon because it's perfect. We love it because it's ours. Cheers, y'all. Bourbon Hunter out. If there's a topic you would like me to tackle, and by tackle, I mean listen to me talk way too long while you silently question your life choices, drop a comment below. I'll see it, probably nod wisely, and immediately start planning a 2-hour deep dive in my head. Too shy to comment publicly? No problem. Send your brilliant, questionable, or downright ridiculous ideas to bourbonhunteranonymous@gmail.com. I read every single one, usually over a glass of something tasty, and then promptly turn it into a monologue that somehow connects bourbon, bad marketing, and my personal theories on life. Seriously, help me feed my bourbon-shaped brain. I need material. The internet needs material. And let's face it, you secretly want to hear me go on about it anyway. And that's another pour down. If you enjoyed hanging out in the hunt today, don't leave me standing here like an empty bottle on a Sunday morning. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment about what I should track down next. Remember, bourbon may age gracefully, but my YouTube channel only grows if you feed it. I'll see you in the next hunt. Cheers, bourbon hunters.